Amara Jenkins wiped down the last table in her section, her reflection catching in the polished surface. 28 years old, working the evening shift at La Belle Vie, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. Her white button-down shirt was crisp, her black slacks perfectly pressed, and her natural hair pulled back in an elegant bun. She'd been doing this for 6 months now, balancing work with her business school classes during the day. Every tip, every smile, every perfectly delivered plate brought her one step closer to her MBA. The restaurant hummed with the quiet chatter of wealthy diners. Crystal glasses clinked softly. Classical music drifted through the air. Amara loved this part of the evening when everything felt smooth and under control. She glanced at the reservation list. Friday night meant the full house, which meant good money. She needed it. Tuition wasn't getting any cheaper. What most people at La Belle Vie didn't know was that Amara was married. She kept her personal life private, wearing her simple wedding band on a chain under her shirt instead of on her finger. She wanted to make it on her own, to prove she could succeed without anyone's help. Her professors didn't need to know, her coworkers didn't need to know, and definitely the customers didn't need to know. Her husband, Victor, was a complicated man with a complicated past. Years ago, he'd been involved in things he wasn't proud of. The kind of business that happened in shadows, with handshakes that meant more than contracts. But that was behind him now. He'd walked away from that life, built legitimate security companies, and tried to become the man he wanted to be. Still, his reputation lingered like smoke. Some people remembered, some people whispered. Victor had a habit that both annoyed and touched Amara. Once or twice a week, he'd come to La Belle Vie and sit at table 7, tucked away in the corner where he could see everything. He'd order wine, sometimes a meal, and watch her work. Not in a creepy way, but in a protective way that made her heart warm even when she rolled her eyes about it. He brought associates sometimes, pretending to discuss business, but she knew the truth. He just wanted to make sure she was safe. Tonight was one of those nights. Amara had spotted him 20 minutes ago when he walked in with 2 of his trusted friends, Marco and Dimitri. Victor looked handsome in his dark suit, his hair styled back, that serious expression he wore when he was trying to blend in. He'd nodded at her slightly, a secret acknowledgement that no one else would notice. She'd smiled back, just a tiny lift of her lips, before turning to greet a new table. Everything was going perfectly until Derek Thompson showed up for his shift. Derek was the new manager, hired 3 weeks ago by the owner, who spent most of his time at his other restaurants. Derek was in his 40s, always wore too much cologne, and had the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. From day one, Amara had felt his cold stares. He questioned her constantly, checked her work more than anyone else's, and made little comments that felt like tiny cuts. The other waitresses had noticed too. Maya, who'd worked there for 3 years, had pulled Amara aside last week. "Watch yourself around him," she'd whispered. "I've heard things. Be careful." Amara had nodded, already on guard. She recognized men like Derek, men who felt threatened by competence, especially when it came in a package they didn't expect or respect. The evening was flowing smoothly until table 12 called her over. Mr. Blackwell, a regular who came every Friday with his wife, gestured to his wine glass with a frown. Amara approached with her professional smile firmly in place. "Is everything all right, Mr. Blackwell?" The older man held his glass up to the light. "This isn't the 2015 vintage I ordered. This tastes like the 2017. Amara's stomach dropped slightly. She'd personally brought the bottle from the wine cellar, checked the label twice. But wine is subjective, and Mr. Blackwell knew his bottles. "I sincerely apologize, sir. Let me check on that right away and bring you the correct vintage." Mrs. Blackwell smiled kindly at Amara. "These things happen, dear. No harm done." But as Amara turned toward the wine cellar, Derek appeared out of nowhere, his face already red with anger. He must have been hovering, watching, waiting for any mistake. His voice cut through the gentle restaurant ambiance like a knife. "Jenkins, my office, now." Heads turned, Conversations paused. The entire dining room seemed to hold its breath. Amara felt heat rise to her cheeks, not from shame, but from anger at being called out so publicly. At table 7, she saw Victor's hand freeze on his wine glass. His jaw tightened. "Mr. Thompson, I was just going to get the correct bottle," Amara said quietly, trying to keep the situation calm. "I said now." Derek's voice was louder this time. He grabbed her arm, his fingers digging into her skin above her elbow. "We need to discuss your incompetence immediately." The word hung in the air. Incompetence. Amara had never messed up an order in 6 months. Her tip average was the highest in the restaurant. Customers requested her section specifically, and Derek knew all of this. Other waitresses watched with wide eyes. Maya, who'd worked there for 3 years, looked horrified. The bartender, James, started moving toward them, but stopped, unsure what to do. This was a manager. This was authority. But it felt wrong. It looked wrong. Derek started pulling Amara toward the back hallway, past the kitchen, toward the bathrooms in his office beyond. She could have resisted, could have made a scene, but part of her wanted to handle this professionally. Maybe she could reason with him in private. Maybe this could be resolved. But as they moved through the dining room, she caught Victor's eye. What she saw there made her blood run cold. Not because she was afraid of him, but because she knew that look. It was the look of a man who was deciding exactly how much restraint he could manage. His associates had noticed too. Marco's hand moved to Victor's shoulder, a silent reminder. Dimitri shook his head slightly, a warning. Victor stayed seated, but every muscle in his body was coiled like a spring. His eyes never left Amara as Derek dragged her through the dining room, past shocked diners, past whispered conversations, into the hallway where the bathroom doors gleamed under fluorescent lights. The evening had just taken a very dangerous turn, and Amara felt it in her bones. Everything was about to change. The hallway was cold compared to the warm dining room. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, harsh and unforgiving. Derek's grip on Amara's arm hadn't loosened. If anything, his fingers dug deeper as he pushed her against the wall near the women's bathroom. The kitchen sounds felt miles away now, just distant clattering and muffled voices that couldn't help her hear. Amara yanked her arm free, rubbing the spot where his fingers had been. She could feel bruises forming already. "You're out of line, Mr. Thompson. I can walk on my own." Derek laughed, but there was no humor in it. The sound bounced off the tile walls, making everything feel smaller, more trapped. "You're out of line? You just embarrassed this restaurant in front of one of our best customers. Do you know how much Mr. Blackwell spends here monthly?" "It was a simple wine mistake that I was fixing." Amara kept her voice steady, professional. Her mother had taught her that staying calm was power, especially when someone wanted to see you break. "I've already apologized and was getting the correct bottle." "That's the problem with people like you." Derek stepped closer. The cologne was overwhelming now, mixing with something else, something bitter. "You always have excuses, always think you're smarter than everyone else, walking around here like you own the place. People like you." The words landed exactly as Derek intended them to. Amara had heard variations of this her whole life. In school, in job interviews, in stores where security followed her, in moments where her excellence was treated like arrogance instead of earned confidence. "I do my job well." Amara stood straighter. "My customers are happy. My reviews are excellent. One wine confusion doesn't change that." Derek's face twisted into something ugly. "Your customers. Let me tell you something, sweetheart. You're replaceable. There are hundreds of girls who'd kill for this job. Girls who'd show proper respect. Girls who understand their place." The threat hung between them like poison. Amara's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "How dare you suggest—" "I'm not suggesting anything," Derek cut her off, moving even closer. She could smell the wine on his breath now. Had he been drinking in his office? "You see, Amara, I've been watching you. Watching how you smile at customers, how friendly you are. Makes me wonder what else you do for good tips." The accusation hit like a slap. Amara's hands clenched into fists at her sides. "How dare you suggest—" She tried to push past him, but Derek grabbed her both shoulders, pressing her back against the wall. The cold tile bit through her thin shirt. "Not until we finish our conversation. You need to learn respect, Amara. Need to understand how things work here. I could make your life very easy or very difficult. Your choice." Fear and fury mixed in Amara's chest. She thought about screaming, but pride held her back. She'd dealt with men like this before. Insecure men who used whatever power they had to make others feel small. The worst part was that he might be right. She'd seen this play out before, had watched other women come forward only to be questioned, doubted, dismissed. The system protected men like Derek. It always had. But then something changed in Derek.
Derek's confusion lasted exactly 3 seconds before recognition dawned on his face. Amara watched it happen in real time, watched his expression shift from irritation to uncertainty to something that looked a lot like panic. He'd seen Victor before, probably sitting quietly at table 7, probably dismissed him as just another businessman. But now, up close, with those cold gray eyes fixed on him like a predator selecting prey, Derek was remembering things. Stories, rumors, whispers that circulated in certain circles about Viktor Volkov. I said, "Remove your hands." Victor stopped 6 feet away. His tone hadn't changed. Still quiet, still controlled. "Oh, wait. You already did." Smart. Derek tried to laugh it off, but the sound came out strangled. "Listen, buddy, I don't know what she told you, but this is restaurant business. Employee discipline. You need to go back to your table." Employee discipline. Victor repeated the words like he was tasting them, finding them bitter. Is that what we're calling it? Because from where I was sitting at table 7, watching my wife get dragged through a dining room by her arm, it looked like something else entirely. Amara stood straighter, her back still against the wall. Part of her wanted to handle this herself, to prove she didn't need rescuing, but another part of her, the part that was still shaking from Derek's threats and wandering hands, was grateful Victor was here. Marriage was partnership after all. Sometimes you stood alone. Sometimes you stood together. "Your wife?" Derek's voice pitched higher. He looked at Amara like seeing her for the first time. "You're married to him? You never said." "Because it's none of your business," Amara cut in, her voice steady now. "My personal life has nothing to do with my job performance, which, by the way, has been excellent until you decided to target me." Derek's face flushed red. "Target you? I was addressing a legitimate customer complaint." "By grabbing her?" Marco's voice came from the hallway entrance. He hadn't moved closer, but his question hung in the air. "By dragging her away from the dining room? That standard management technique were you trained? And then cornering her in a hallway? Making threats about her job? Suggesting she could be friendlier? We heard that part too. Sound travels in these hallways." Derek's eyes darted between the 3 men and Amara. Trapped. He was trapped and starting to realize it. "You're twisting everything. I was just assaulting my wife." Victor's voice cut through Derek's protests like a blade. "Assault, harassment, coercion. Should I continue with the legal definitions, or are we clear?" The temperature in the hallway seemed to drop 10 degrees. Amara had seen Victor angry before, but never like this. Never this cold, this controlled. It was somehow worse than shouting. This was the man who'd walked away from his old life, but hadn't forgotten the lessons learned there. This was someone who understood power in all its forms. "Now, wait just a minute." Derek held up his hands defensively. "No, you wait." Victor pulled his phone from his pocket, moving with deliberate slowness. "See, I have a problem, Derek. Can I call you Derek? I have a problem because my natural instinct right now is to handle this the old way, the way I would have handled things 5 years ago. But I'm not that person anymore. I'm trying to be better. Civilized." He unlocked his phone, scrolled through his contacts. "So instead, I'm going to make a phone call to Richard Castellano. You know Richard, right? The owner of this establishment? He owes my security company a favor. Actually, he owes me several favors. We've kept some unfortunate incidents quiet at his other restaurants." Derek's face went from red to pale in seconds. "You can't just call the owner at 9 o'clock on a Friday night." "Can't I?" Victor pressed the call button, putting the phone on speaker. The ringing echoed in the hallway. Once, twice. Then a voice answered. "Victor? Is everything all right?" Richard Castellano sounded concerned. Background noise of another restaurant behind his voice. "Richard, I'm at La Bellevue, in the back hallway near the bathrooms. I need you here. Now. There's been an incident involving your new manager and my wife." Silence on the other end. "Then, your wife works at La Bellevue?" "She does. Amara Jenkins, excellent waitress, perfect record, until tonight when Derek Thompson decided to assault her. I'm 10 minutes away. Nobody moves." The line went dead. Derek looked like he might be sick. "Assault is a strong word. This is a misunderstanding." "Is it?" Amara found her voice again, stronger now. "Is it a misunderstanding that you grabbed my arm hard enough to leave bruises? That you dragged me away from customers? That you cornered me here and suggested I could be friendlier to avoid being written up? That you put your hands on my shoulders when I tried to leave?" "She's making this sound worse than it was," Derek appealed to Victor, as if man to man they could work this out. "Wrong move." Victor's expression darkened. "My wife doesn't exaggerate. My wife doesn't lie. And my wife certainly doesn't deserve to be dismissed by the man who just assaulted her. So here's what's going to happen. You're going to stand right there. We're going to wait for Richard, and Amara's going to tell him exactly what happened. Then, you're going to face consequences." "Consequences," Derek repeated, trying for scornful but landing on nervous. "Real ones, legal ones, professional ones. The kind that follow you, because you're not going to do this to another woman after Amara. I'm going to make absolutely certain of that." The 10 minutes felt like hours. Derek shifted his weight from foot to foot, sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool hallway. He tried leaving twice, but Marco and Dimitri remained positioned at the exit, not threatening, just present, immovable. Victor stood near Amara, not touching her, but close enough that she could feel his protective energy radiating outward. Amara used the time to steady herself. Her hands had stopped shaking. The initial shock was wearing off, replaced by something harder, more determined. She'd been through too much in life to let a man like Derek break her. Growing up in a neighborhood where opportunities were scarce, working 2 jobs to put herself through undergraduate school, fighting for every scholarship, every chance, Derek Thompson was just another obstacle, and she'd overcome worse. The sound of rapid footsteps echoed from the dining room. Richard Castellano burst into the hallway, his expensive suit rumpled, his usually perfect hair disheveled. He'd clearly rushed over. Behind him came an older woman Amara recognized as Margaret Chen, the restaurant's HR director who worked across all of Richard's properties. "All right, what happened?" Richard looked around at the scene, his expression grave. Derek jumped in immediately. "Richard, thank God you're here. This is blown completely out of proportion. There was a customer complaint about wrong wine. I was addressing it with Amara, and somehow his husband thinks—" "I'm going to stop you right there," Richard held up his hand. "Margaret, please document everything. Victor, Amara, tell me exactly what occurred. Start from the beginning." Amara took a deep breath and spoke clearly. She described Mr. Blackwell's complaint, her immediate move to correct it, Derek's public humiliation of her in the dining room, being grabbed and dragged to the hallway, and finally the encounter here where Derek had cornered her, made inappropriate suggestions, and physically prevented her from leaving. As she spoke, she pulled her sleeve up, showing the reddening marks on her arm where Derek's fingers had dug in. Margaret took photos with her phone. Richard's jaw tightened with each detail. "That's not what happened," Derek protested weakly. "I barely touched her." "Barely?" Victor's voice was ice. "We watched you grab her. We heard your conversation. And those marks on her arm tell a pretty clear story, Derek." Margaret spoke for the first time, her voice professional but sharp. "Mr. Thompson, I've been reviewing complaints since Richard called me. In the 3 weeks you've been here, we've had 4 separate incidents reported about your behavior toward female staff. 4. They were in my inbox, waiting for Monday review." Derek's face drained of color completely. "Those were misunderstandings too. 4 women don't misunderstand the same behavior." Margaret cut him off. "And now we have a 5th complaint, this one involving physical assault and sexual harassment, this one with witnesses." Richard turned to Derek, and all the friendliness that usually characterized the restaurant owner was gone. "You're fired. Effective immediately.
Margaret will escort you to collect your personal items. You'll surrender your keys and access cards. You have 5 minutes. You can't just do this. Derek's voice rose desperately. I have a contract. I'll sue. You're listening to some waitress over me. That waitress has a name, Richard said coldly. And yes, I'm listening to her because unlike you, she has credibility, witnesses, and physical evidence. Your contract has a morality clause. You violated it spectacularly. I'm also pressing charges, Amara said forward, her voice calm but firm, for assault and harassment. And I'll be filing a civil lawsuit. Derek laughed, but it sounded panicked. With what money? Legal fees will bury you. She won't need money, a new voice said. Everyone turned to see an elegant black woman in her 60s entering the hallway. Amara recognized her immediately. Judge Patricia Morrison, recently retired, who had been dining at table 8 all evening. I've been practicing civil rights law for 35 years before taking a bench. I'll represent Miss Jenkins pro bono. This is exactly the kind of case I came out of retirement to handle. Behind her, 2 other diners appeared. A younger woman with sharp eyes introduced herself. Sarah Chen, investigative journalist. I'd love to hear more about those other complaints, Miss Chen. She looked at Margaret. Any relation? My daughter? And yes, I'll be providing documentation of the pattern of behavior. Derek looked wildly, seeing his situation collapse in real time. This is insane. You're all insane. No, Victor said quietly. This is consequences, something you've probably avoided your whole life. Not anymore. Richard nodded to Margaret, who gestured for Derek to follow her. As they walked away, Derek shot one last venomous look at Amara, but she met his gaze steadily. She wasn't afraid.
Monday morning arrived with unexpected chaos. Amara woke to her phone buzzing relentlessly on the nightstand. Text messages, missed calls, social media notifications flooding in like a tidal wave. She rubbed her eyes, confused, and reached for the phone. Victor was already up, standing by the bedroom window with his coffee, his expression thoughtful. You might want to see this, he said gently. Amara opened her social media and her breath caught. Maya, her co-worker from the restaurant, had posted about Friday night. Not just a casual mention, but a full account of what she'd witnessed. The post had gone viral overnight. Thousands of shares, hundreds of comments. Other women sharing their own stories of workplace harassment, of managers who abused power, of times they'd been cornered and threatened and dismissed. Oh my God, Amara whispered, scrolling through the responses. Restaurant workers from across the city were coming forward with their own Derek Thompson stories. Apparently, he'd worked at 4 different establishments in 3 years, leaving each one under mysterious circumstances that suddenly weren't so mysterious anymore. Her phone rang, an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something told her to pick up. Hello? Ms. Jenkins? This is Amanda Rivera from Channel 7 News. We'd love to interview you about what happened at La Belle Vie. Your story is resonating with so many people. Amara's first instinct was to say no. She wasn't looking for attention. She just wanted justice and to move on with her life. But then she thought about those 4 other complaints Margaret had mentioned, about the women whose stories had sat in an inbox, waiting, about every waitress, every employee who'd suffered in silence because speaking up seemed pointless. I'll do it, she said. But I want to talk about more than just what happened to me. I want to talk about the system that protects men like Derek Thompson. The interview aired Tuesday evening. Amara sat across from Amanda Rivera in the studio, dressed professionally, her natural hair styled beautifully. She spoke clearly and calmly about the incident, about the pattern of behavior, about how workplace harassment thrived in environments where reporting mechanisms failed and power imbalances were ignored. She didn't cry. She didn't get emotional. She simply told the truth with a dignity that made it impossible to dismiss her. The interviewer asked if she was afraid of retaliation. Amara smiled slightly. I'm not afraid anymore. I'm angry. And anger, when directed properly, creates change. The interview clip went even more viral than Maya's post. By Wednesday, Amara's business school professors were reaching out. Dr. Sandra Martinez, who taught her organizational behavior class, asked to meet for coffee. They sat in a quiet cafe near campus, steam rising from their cups. Dr. Martinez leaned forward, her eyes intense. What you did took remarkable courage. I've been researching workplace harassment in the service industry for years. Would you be interested in working as my research assistant? We could use your experience, your insight, make this about more than just your story. Amara felt something shift inside her. This wasn't just about Derek anymore. This was about systemic change. I'd be honored. Thursday brought a surprise visitor to her apartment. Judge Patricia Morrison arrived with a thick folder of documents. She distices is building itself, she explained, spreading papers across Amara's dining room table. 7 women have come forward so far with complaints against Derek Thompson spanning 5 years. 2 are willing to join the lawsuit. The evidence is overwhelming. Victor brought them tea, then quietly excused himself to give them privacy. Judge Morrison watched him go, then looked at Amara with curiosity. You have an interesting husband. I do, Amara agreed. He's trying very hard to be someone different than he used to be. Aren't we all? The judge said wisely. What matters is the trying. What matters is using whatever power we have for good. By Friday, exactly a week after the incident, Richard Castellano called Amara personally. I wanted you to know we've completely overhauled our hiring and reporting procedures. Margaret is implementing mandatory harassment training for all management, and we're creating an anonymous reporting system that goes directly to an outside firm, not internal HR. That's good, Amara said, but what about the other restaurants in the city? Derek worked at 4 places before La Belle Vie. How many other managers like him are out there right now? Richard was quiet for a moment. You're right, this needs to be industry-wide. That conversation led to another, then another. By the following week, the city's restaurant association was holding an emergency meeting. Amara was invited to speak. She stood before a room full of restaurant owners and managers, many of them skeptical, some of them defensive. I'm not here to attack anyone, she began. I'm here to tell you that the service industry has a culture problem. We treat harassment as inevitable instead of unacceptable. We protect managers over employees. We tell workers to toughen up instead of creating safe environments. And it costs you. It costs you good employees, reputation, and money when lawsuits happen. She presented data from Dr. Martinez's research. She told stories, not just her own, but the ones that had flooded her inbox all week. She proposed solutions, third-party reporting systems, regular anonymous surveys, real consequences for violations, support systems for victims. Some owners dismissed her, but others listened, really listened. Victor watched from the back of the room, pride evident on his face. This was who Amara truly was, who she'd always been. Not a victim, not someone who needed protection, a fighter, a leader, someone who turned pain into purpose. Sarah Chen, the journalist, published a full investigation into Derek Thompson's employment history. The article was damning, detailing a pattern of harassment, manipulation, and abuse enabled by restaurants who'd quietly let him resign rather than face real accountability. 6 months passed like pages turning in a book Amara was writing herself. The cold winter gave way to spring, and with it came transformation. The lawsuit against Derek Thompson settled out of court for a significant sum. He faced criminal charges too, charges that stuck because 7 women stood together, their voices unified and unbreakable. The judge gave him probation, mandatory counseling, and a record that would follow him forever. More importantly, he'd never work in restaurant management again. Amara sat in the auditorium at her business school, wearing her cap and gown, waiting for her name to be called. The past months had been a whirlwind of studies, interviews, speaking engagements, and building something she never imagined. Her research work with Dr. Martinez had turned into a published paper on workplace harassment in service industries. That paper caught attention, the right kind of attention. Amara Jenkins graduating summa cum laude with her master's in business administration. The applause was thunderous. Her classmates who'd watched her juggle everything with grace stood up. Victor was in the 3rd row, beaming with pride that made her heart swell. Next to him sat Judge Morrison, Dr. Martinez, Maya from the restaurant, and surprisingly, Richard Castellano. They'd all become part of her story, part of her journey. As Amara walked across the stage to receive her diploma, she thought about that night in the hallway. How terrifying it had been. How angry she had felt.
how that moment could have broken her. Instead, it had revealed something she'd always possessed but never fully recognized: the power to turn pain into purpose, trauma into triumph. The commencement speaker finished, and then came the surprise. We have one more speaker today, a graduate who embodies everything we hope to instill in our students: courage, intelligence, and commitment to making the world better. Amara Jenkins has agreed to say a few words. Amara hadn't prepared a speech. She walked to the podium with just her thoughts and her truth. Looking out at hundreds of faces, graduates ready to enter the world, she took a breath. 6 months ago, I was assaulted at my workplace. A manager grabbed me, dragged me into a hallway, and threatened my job because I had the audacity to be good at it, to be confident, to exist in a space where someone like him thought I didn't belong. The auditorium was completely silent. I could have stayed quiet. Statistics say most people do. It's easier. It's safer. But staying quiet protects the wrong people. It protects the Derek Thompsons of the world while leaving victims isolated and afraid. So I spoke up. And you know what happened? Other people spoke up too. 7 women found their courage because one person decided to stop protecting a system that was broken. She paused, gathering her thoughts. We're about to enter a business world that desperately needs change. You're going to see harassment, discrimination, and abuse of power. You're going to witness moments where speaking up seems risky or pointless. But I'm here to tell you that your voice matters. Your courage matters. And sometimes, one person standing up creates a ripple that becomes a wave. Amara glanced at Victor, who nodded encouragingly. I also learned that strength doesn't mean doing everything alone. My husband could have handled that situation violently. His instinct was to protect me in the way he once knew, but he chose restraint. He chose to let the system work, and together we proved that justice doesn't require becoming what you're fighting against. The applause started slowly, then built. By the time Amara finished, the entire auditorium was standing. But she wasn't done yet. Today, I'm announcing the launch of my consulting firm, Equity Table. We'll work with restaurants and hospitality businesses to create safe, respectful workplaces. We'll train managers, establish reporting systems, and support employees. Because everyone deserves to work without fear. Everyone deserves dignity. After the ceremony, people swarmed Amara, graduates asking how to get involved, business owners requesting